Hey Bears fans, Harrison Graham here on Chat Sports. We are live here on NFL Daily, but I got to get you caught up on the latest surrounding the Chicago Bears. Andy Dalton met with the media just about in the last hour or so. We will discuss that towards the end of this portion of the show, but we're going to start things off with kind of the news of the day and something we've been waiting to see happen. Mitchell Trubisky, we all wondered where he would end up. He has agreed to a deal with the Buffalo Bills. Now, as we're filming this, I have not seen the financial details here. 1-year deal, I would guess somewhere in the $5 to $7 million range for Mitchell Trubisky. Think about what Tyrod Taylor got. He got 1 year, $5.5 million. I would guess he's somewhere in that range, considering he will be the backup to Josh Allen. But as this relates to the Chicago Bears, the Trubisky era officially comes to an end. Now, we knew that was going to be the case really months ago, but that was absolutely certain once Andy Dalton signed his contract with the Bears. Again, we will talk about him later on in the show, but now that Trubisky is officially a Buffalo Bill, it's over. And we knew it was over. Like I said, this was obvious. The way Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor called that game for Trubisky in the playoffs proved one thing. They don't trust him. They don't think that he can be the leader of this franchise at quarterback moving forward. And when I watched that game play out and when it ended and they basically just didn't let him throw the ball downfield, they played it super safe in a playoff game, I said, this is done. There's no way they're bringing back Mitchell Trubisky to Chicago, and boom, a couple months later, that is what has happened here, is now he is heading to Buffalo on a 1-year deal. Grade the Trubisky era in Chicago, A, B, C, D, or F. Let's hear it from you guys in the comment section on this one. How do you guys feel about how things played out with Trubisky? 4 seasons in Chicago, certainly a lot of ups and downs. For me, I'm going to give it a C. Look, it wasn't a complete disaster. You made the playoffs twice. In 2018, this team had a Super Bowl caliber regular season. Now, the double doink in the playoffs against Philadelphia, which we all remember very well. Trubisky actually played pretty well in that game, but he took a step back in 2019, and in 2020, got benched for half the season, and the writing was on the wall. Obviously, it's not great, right? It's not a total disaster because he won more games than he lost in the regular season, 2 playoff appearances. But when you trade up to get a guy number 2 overall, I can't give you more than a C when you put up these type of numbers. And look, Trubisky, hard worker. It's not completely his fault things didn't work out. But it's even harder of a pill to swallow when you factor in that Ryan Pace moved up to take Mitch Trubisky over these 2 guys. Patrick Mahomes, who's maybe already into the Hall of Fame. If not already, we'll have a case very, very soon. Deshaun Watson very much could be heading to Canton as well with the kind of career he's having early on. And to take Mitchell Trubisky, that's a tough one. But I'll say this when it comes to Mitch. Don't blame Trubisky for the last 4 years. Blame Ryan Pace. He's been a bad GM. He traded up for the wrong quarterback when, by the way, even if Trubisky was the guy he wanted, he didn't have to move up from 3 to 2. The 49ers were never going to draft him. They duped Ryan Pace, which is even more proof that he's a bad GM, that he bought into that crap, that San Francisco might draft him, moves up for him, doesn't evaluate Mahomes and Watson with very much depth whatsoever, and this is what you get, an up and down 4 seasons with Mitchell Trubisky in Chicago. So I wish Mitch the best. He worked hard. He said all the right things. He was a leader, locker room guy. Got nothing but good things to say about him as a teammate and as a competitor. He just wasn't that great of a quarterback, and that's okay. That's how these things happen in the NFL. Very hit and miss when you're drafting a quarterback, even in the first round. Will Mitchell Trubisky be a starting quarterback again at some point? I want you guys to predict this one for me. Type Y for yes, type N for no. Will Mitch Trubisky ever start again in the NFL? Subscribe to Chicago Bears Now. You guys see the link below. It's youtube.com/Bears Now. If you're watching on our Bears channel, just hit that big red button and subscribe. We're plugging out videos every single day. Free agency, the draft is coming up soon. We're going to cover it all. If you're watching live on NFL Daily, you see the link on screen. It's youtube.com/Bears Now. Go ahead and check out our Bears Only channel. Now, this one surprised me. Kenny Golladay reportedly met with Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy on Wednesday. This one's interesting. Let's jump on in here as, again, we'll get to Dalton in a few minutes. He's set to visit the Giants next, either today or tomorrow. We'll see when that meeting actually goes down, and that's a more natural fit. They need a number one receiver. I wonder, is it possible that the Bears can make it work where they keep Allen Robinson and sign Golladay? I find that hard to believe. This seems more of okay, A-Rob's not happy. Maybe we trade him after we sign Golladay, get a first-round pick for Robinson, and slightly downgrade at the number one receiver. That seems like the more likely scenario, but it's interesting. I'll tell you what, because on the flip side, the other point of view could be, okay, we didn't nail the quarterback situation. We didn't get Russell Wilson. Deshaun's not going to happen. So we get a veteran in Andy Dalton. Maybe, and when he had the best years of his career in Cincinnati, he had good weapons around him. Think about this. David Montgomery. You've got Robinson. If you could keep him with Kenny Golladay and Darnell Mooney, at that point, that's a lot of weapons around Andy Dalton, and you're not asking him to be a hero. You're asking him, hey, be accurate, hit the open man, move the chains. Could that be the path the Bears have turned to now after missing out on Russell Wilson? Maybe. I think it's still a long shot, though, financially. I also want to know, what does this mean for A-Rob? If it means that they're trying to keep both, is Robinson going to be happy about that? Hey, you didn't pay me, but you signed Kenny Golladay? How's that going to work? I think the more likely scenario is Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are doing their homework and saying, look, Robinson's not happy. If we can get Golladay at a price we like, maybe we trade Robinson for a first-round pick, move up and draft a quarterback. Who knows? But this is very fascinating and something I am going to follow very, very closely over the next day or two, or until Kenny Golladay signs with an NFL team, and maybe, just maybe, that team will be the Chicago Bears. Pick a receiver. If you have to have one, who you taking? AR for Allen Robinson, type KG for Golladay. I still like Robinson more. I think we've seen what this guy can do in this offense, but, man, the idea of getting both maybe, that is very, very interesting. Get your votes in, AR or KG. Now, Kenny Golladay was banged up last year, only played in 5 games, numerous injuries. I think he had an ankle issue. He had a back issue at one point. He just kept he was like day-to-day for like the whole season, but barely played. Trust me, I know. He was on my fantasy team. It was a headache. But the 2 years prior to last year, back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. This guy was on the verge of being like, hey, is he a top 5 receiver? He was starting to enter that conversation. Now, obviously got to back off that a little bit. I'd say fully healthy, he's top 15, somewhere in there. He's really, really good. Man, again, the thought of him with Allen Robinson is very, very fascinating. So keep it here on Bears Now, youtube.com/Bears Now. If they sign Golladay, trust me, we're going to break that down. Now, I mentioned earlier the Chicago Bears signed Andy Dalton, obviously, a couple of days ago. You guys know that. But he already had his introductory press conference. And look, the first couple of questions he answered, saying things like the opportunity to start, blah, blah, blah. Then he was flat out asked, so one of the reporters in Chicago said, hey, you've referenced yourself as the starter. Have you gotten assurances that that's the case? And he said, quote, they told me I was the starter. That's the assurance I got. So, I mean, it seems like he's going to be the starter, right? Now, Adam Schefter the last couple of days, don't rule out a Russell Wilson trade closer to the draft. And absolutely the Bears should explore that. But I kind of told you guys the other day that if you're signing Andy Dalton to $10+ million, probably going to be your starting quarterback. Now, that doesn't mean you should end your quarterback search there. That doesn't mean you should not look to draft a quarterback. But if you listen to that press conference, and if you haven't, you can go check it out on the Chicago Bears Twitter feed. That sounds like the guy who's going to be the starting quarterback. Now, things can change. The NFL is fluid. The Seahawks could call back and say, hey, Russ isn't happy. We're looking to move him now. And obviously at that point, you have to be very interested if you are Ryan Pace, if you are Matt Nagy. But I heard a guy who's going to be the starter next year. That's what I heard. Take that for what you will. But, yeah, it's not looking great if you were hoping the Bears were going to get someone else. How excited are you about Andy Dalton, or are you excited? Type 1 for yes, type 2 for no. I'm not super amped. I'll tell you what, if you get Golladay and Robinson on the same team, that's at least intriguing at that point because, again, Dalton's best seasons were when they had multiple weapons in Cincinnati. So we will see on that front. But get your votes in. If you're excited about them, type 1. If you're not, type 2. Go ahead and let me know. Andy Dalton did have this to say: I bring a lot of experience, I've played in a lot of games, and have done a lot in this league. This is the place I wanted to be. This is a great situation, a great fit. This roster has a great mix of veteran leadership and a lot of talent, and there's a lot of truth in what he is saying there. I would also argue that we've probably seen the best of Andy Dalton at this point, but this is a guy who started, almost 150 games in the National Football League. You don't do that by accident. That's not a fluke. He started almost a decade in Cincinnati, did some good things, 1.75 to 1 touchdown interception ratio. Not great, but not horrendous by any means. Been to a couple of Pro Bowls, 4 straight playoff appearances with Cincinnati as well. Did some okay things with Dallas last year. He's good when you have good weapons around him. Can Chicago get enough of that? We'll have to wait and see what happens there. But again, I've been pretty consistent. I'm not super amped up about this. I think he's better than Nick Foles. That's about all I think. He'll have to prove me wrong. He'll have to prove Bears fans wrong. And, it'll be an interesting few months, especially with the draft coming up in April. Predict the Bears' record in 2021 and assume that Andy Dalton is the starter. You can base it on a 17-game schedule. I think that's what we're going to get. I'll go 8-9, 7-10. I think this roster is in pretty good shape, but I need to see more, so we'll have to